Chara Vishesham Chinmayamekam Anantam Anadin Vaivavanatam Anantasharanyam Tanmaya Chitta Tvaya Hridi Vande. Vashesham idanim Vati mama tvaranugraha sabja Tam chamahesha Sadaiva mamatma Svatvam. Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachubram Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidho Vidduhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, free of all taint, the essence of everything which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly. There shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishwamahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome everyone to our final class in the series of classes that we have been engaged in, all on the subject of Advaita Yoga. It's been being called by our original chart that we looked at in the first class, Gaudapada's non-touch yoga. Gaudapada was an illumined soul, so I pay my obeisances to him. He was the teacher of the great Adi Shankaracharya, and they all lived, he and his teachers, around 500, 600, 700 AD. And that lineage has lasted as the Shankara order for ever since. So that's some 1400 years that we're looking at this great lineage moving on through India with its 4 pilgrimage spots that Shankara himself set up when he went around India, much like our Swami Vivekananda went around the world in this day and time. They both are very similar to each other. Each lived under 40 years. I think Shankara lived till he was 32, and Swamiji only lived till he was 39, and they compacted a whole bunch of beneficial work, study, meditation, and realization into their short lives, as seers are wont to do quite often. Some of them stay around longer to be exemplars, because as we often say here, we're not looking so much for saviors, we're looking for exemplars. The greatest souls really are exemplars. They want you to be the perfect, they want you to find the kingdom of heaven within you, and they want you to do it on your own steam. If they have to come back and help you, well, they'll do that, but they prefer to see sadhakas, people who practice yoga, people who practice Vedanta, who practice Buddhism, who practice in any religion, really, because these seers have engendered inside of themselves a universal mind that says, as it were, there's no such thing as a foreign religion. all religion is indigenous to your soul. So they've thrown open the doors, these compartmentalized ideas that people have about different cultures, different races, different borders, different religions, different genders. All of those wars have been put to peace inside of them, and they're living in a peace that passes all understanding. Whereas I just chanted Shanti, 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 peace on 3 levels: external, internal, and transcendent. That's why we say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. It's that old familiar refrain. See, in the Vedantic circles, it's all about peace with your gross body, peace with your subtle body, and peace with your causal body. Or it's about the A, U, and M of Om, the great word. However you split it up, it always splits up nicely into 3s, and that also includes the worlds, the external world, the internal world, and the transcendent world. So these teachings being foundational to our cosmology and working their way into philosophy, and eventually, if we put them into practice, also transforming into what's called spirituality. And there's another good triputi: cosmology, philosophy, and spirituality. Then mature into what Gaudapada has been telling us is called non-touch yoga. Very interesting term. Some satsangs in the Sunday mornings that we're also live streaming. Welcome to our live streaming audience, by the way, from points around the world, hopefully. At satsang, people were talking about defining non-touch yoga and sending in questions and so forth. So basically, beyond the senses, beyond the 5 senses, no, beyond the 20 senses, beyond the 10 senses to start out with, because you have 5 external senses in that gross body, and then you have a subtle body that has 5 internal senses. So immediately you're starting out with 2 sets of 5s in our tradition, because they want you to know that the physical is not the only reality, that as you march into these kingdoms of heaven within you, that my Father's mansion has many chambers, that there are many levels to existence, and consciousness moves amongst them all. And the seers are just those beings that have become very facile at moving. Moving amongst the consciousness which is ever stable. Sort of, there you have again the dichotomy of non-touch yoga. Can't touch it, can't smell it, can't see it. As John said, nobody has ever seen God. So it's not something that you can apprehend with these 5 outer senses. It has to be, you have to tune those inner senses, and then finally you have to get to a single sense called the third eye, or if thine eye be single, thou shalt know the truth, in order to have a spectacular and unified vision. You call that beatific vision, or you can call it nirvana, or you can call it satori, or you can call it moksha or mukti or samadhi. It's been around, and it's a great awakener of souls. Even if you have a small glimpse of it for a short amount of time, an insight, to say. When you pile enough of those insights together, then you're heading towards that. Those are all straws that will break the camel's back. The house of cards will come falling down, and you'll have this unified vision called non-dual samadhi. Well, that's what causes beings to invent such sort of names for these yogas. Yoga is already oneness at hand. It's not something that you're trying to get into union with God. It just seems that way to you. The Advaita says that's your true nature already. So there are certain adjustments you're going to have to make if you've forgotten that. If you've fallen away from it in any way, then there's certain non-dual sadhana that you're going to have to practice. It's not just a matter of simplicity, as some people make it sound. Some people say, we're already perfect, we don't have to practice, but I never heard the great seers say that. In fact, they themselves, as exemplars, came here and practiced very hard sadhana in the face of everyone. You don't sit 49 days under a tree or go into a wilderness for 40 days or do things like that if you're not practicing a very intense sadhana. You must be very focused, and you must be very desirous of the highest vision. So that's a world-shaking sadhana. In our own case, our own ideal here is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did a 12-year earth-shaking sadhana in which he split open the curtain of Maya so that, let's see how many now, 5 million people could see the Lord. You see, that's how many are following him now. He used to say, in this age you will come here. So that can mean two things. You'll come to the heart, which is the chakra that has to open, so that the 3 chakras are transcended. Eating, drinking, and sex life is transcended, and you purify and you arrive to this chakra, this heart chakra. You'll come to love of the Lord. Or come to that avatar, which he was an exemplar of. Whatever the case may be, you will be guided through the curtain of Maya, and you'll be able to see your true self. There are echelons to that, as we just said, stations of consciousness, even at a very high level. You could say the difference between salvation and liberation. Some people are working for their salvation, but we've seen that salvation usually correlates with heaven. And this is some sort of a release from the trammels of everyday life. But it's those very trammels of everyday life, those trials, those tribulations and so forth, that make for good yogic practice. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, somebody would say, mankind has ruined religion. And he would say, why? He says, there's so many imperfections in religion. And Sri Ramakrishna would retort, but it's God who put those imperfections there, not mankind. And the man was surprised. He explained, he said, if your path was smooth and easy, you wouldn't build any muscles. So here you are in this physical frame, the Annamaya Kosha, we call it in Vedanta, the first of 5 sheaths, and you have 5 senses, and now you're learning you have 5 inner senses in dream tonight, and in meditation and so forth, and you're beginning to find out more about this psychophysical being. It's not just a physical being, or the body-mind mechanism. That's not just a body and a brain, but it's a body, brain, and mind. So you find out that the antakarana is there. The inner cause of everything is the mind. And Brahman is not a cause. That is, God is not a creator. So immediately you begin to step away from the idea of 7-day creation theories and 4,320,000,000 year evolutionary theories, and you start thinking everything is right now. Oh, that's that eternal moment they've been talking about, that I've heard about in spiritual circles. And the Asparsha Yoga, that's the Sanskrit word for non-touch yoga, is precisely that. They've arrived at a place where they're in a non-dual state, and time has ceased for them. Space has been trimmed down. There are even songs in India, I could sing them for you. Practice meditation and cut time down. Cut space away. Because why? Because Nama, Rupa, Desha, Kala, and Nimitta, there's another 5 for you, another quintuplication process, has been on the minds of the Indian saints and seers and savants and saviors for time out of mind. That is name, form, time, space, and causality, or karma, if you want to call it that. Those are 5 things they looked into very deeply and came up with some very keen realizations about those things, how they needed to be transcended because basically, or you might say ultimately, they were illusory. Like the Rip Van Winkle syndrome, you see, the time just goes away for you in deep sleep, goes away for you in a coma, probably will go away from you in death. Only a semblance may remain of it depending on how much of a semblance of your own ego you keep after death. If you've learned how to dissolve your ego, which the great teachers are inviting you to do and advising you to attempt, then you'll find that timeless place within you before you die. And the Zen Roshis, when they're sitting on the Zafu, they ask you that. Have you died on your cushion yet? If you're practicing Zazen, 2, 4, 6, 8 hours of meditation a day, they'll finally get a meeting with a Roshi and he'll say, have you died on your cushion yet? That's what he wants to know. If you had that death of the ego, has it gone away and gotten out of the way so you can see the divine reality behind it? Satori, in that tradition, it would be called. So even these great non-dual paths like Zen, Advaita Vedanta, and Buddhism, they have this very distinct cosmology, spiritual cosmology inside. And that's why I put up a chart like this. It's actually the name of my newest book, which is just about to come out. We finished proofing it, we hope. There's no more mistakes in it or errors, typos. And it's going to come out both in paper form and in ebook form within a month or two, most likely. So it's called Dissolution of the Mind Stream, or Dissolving the Mind Stream. And it happens, the subtitle is Dissolving Name and Form in Time and Space and Causality into Ultimate Reality, into Brahman. So this is actually what people are doing all the time, but they're doing it unconsciously. They wake, they go to sleep, they dream, and they go into deep sleep, and there's no ego and no karma and no forms. And then they come marching back out to dream and back out to waking state. This is an unconscious dissolving of the mind stream, and then a projecting of the mind stream. And inside of that three-stage is another grand triputi that you have to meditate on. So they say, well, let's do this in meditation now. Let's do the same thing we did in sleep last night in meditation. And we begin to understand what non-touch yoga is about then, because it's not a matter of storing up for the future. Ramakrishna couldn't do that. It's not a matter of selfish grasping, of coveting the goods of your neighbor or coveting the goods of other countries. All of those things are going to have to go, so you're not going to be able to touch them. Not if you want the non-touch yoga. If you want beatific vision or satori, then you're going to have to start letting go of things. Probably a nice thing to give them away. This is father of yoga we'll look in today, Patanjali. He was actually Shankara's teacher in another form. Shankara's teacher was called Gaudapada, and he was supposed to be the incarnation of the father of yoga at that time. Patanjali. So, father of yoga has made mention of those types of things. You see that this, he called them alambanas in his philosophy. Your first alambana is earth. Not earth to covet, not earth to enjoy, but earth to take as an object for meditation. You're never attached to it. The great souls don't have to detach because they never attached in the first place. Or if they want to attach and detach, they can do it at will, momentarily, and give it up. It's a great art. Non-touch yoga. So, second alambana is water, and the third alambana is fire, and the fourth is air, and the fifth is ether. And if you meditate on these 5 elements, which people are just taking for granted, and you use them as objects for meditation, all of a sudden you have your first connections in yoga. And the next thing you have to do is connect your senses to them. If you're living a disconnected life, have a fragmented mind, then here's your path, you see. I have to connect earth to my sense of smell, and water to my sense of taste, and fire to sight, of course, and touch to air, and ether to hearing. And all of a sudden I have a nice quintuplication process, two sets of 5s brought together and connected, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel like I know who I am. I know where I came from. I know where I am. I know who I am. I'm beginning to get a sense of that, whereas before it was all far-flung, you see. It was all scattered. That's called kshipta, scattered mind. And the mind just prior to that was called mudha, dull mind. And the mind just after those two is called vikshipta, sometimes balanced, sometimes scattered. You may have noticed in your own mind, see, sometimes focused, sometimes restless. Then the fourth state of mind is called ekagra. Eka is Sanskrit for one. All of a sudden your mind is in a state of oneness, or not two-ness. And then there's even a 5th state of mind called niruddha. Now that would correlate very well with the non-touch yoga. Niruddha means pretty much made extinct, like nirvana. The ekagra is a flat line. But Niruddha is a line and a space, and then a line comes back, and then a space, and then a line. You're disappearing completely into samadhi, like our master did. Sri Ramakrishna was going into samadhi of different kinds all the time, in front of many people, and it made him a very interesting soul to observe. There have been now many, many people who are writing about him because an avatar that lives in a present day age is a very interesting soul. You don't have to look back 2,000 years in Christ's case, or 2,500 years in Buddha's case, or even beyond, or even 1,300 years in the case of Gaudapada, or more, 1,500 years. So this is a lot of powerful names. You see, a lot of the greatest souls have, whatever they've called it, come and practiced and attained this non-touch yoga. So again, it's not just a matter of having to detach. It was never to attach in the first place. So they came here as past masters in full possession of their consciousness. The consciousness that other people have lost track of, you see. So they are then the best exemplars for this yoga, called Advaita Yoga, non-touch yoga, non-duality. There are various names for it. So if you put up a chart like this, the dissolution of the mind stream, it gives you an idea of the depth of Indian cosmology and also the underpinnings of its philosophy. That is, and I can't practice non-touch yoga when I call it up here because I have to touch this thing. But it's all based on the formless meditation of the Upanishads. I just chanted Apiyantu Mamangani Vak Pranaschakshuhu Shotamatra Balamindri Cha Sarvani. Basically, Upanishadam. There's Upanishads, the great scriptures of India, were mentioned twice in that sloka. So here we have Vedanta's and yoga's concurrence about the dissolving of the mind stream practice. It says, the classic and comprehensive meditation in yoga and Vedanta dissolves the elements into the senses. Follow the arrows. The senses into the subtle elements, called tanmatras. The subtle elements into the prana. It's also, tanmatras and prana are missing in our Western ideologies. We don't know much about them, so we have to fill them in with knowledge from other country. The prana is your life force. Man does not live by bread alone. It's that special energy. So the prana gets dissolved back into the mind. And the mind into the great mind. And the great mind into Om, the word. Find Om in yourself, they conclude, and dissolve that self into the great self called Brahman. So Om is in Atman, Atman is in Brahman, or in Paramatman, Supreme Brahman. This is a dissolution of the mind stream that you actually practice in your meditation. Why? Because at the time of death, that's what you do. Many souls, probably in this day and age, cannot go very far back into their consciousness. They don't know the kingdoms of heaven within them, so they may go as far as their ancestors. See? If whole nations worship ancestors, then you can see why they go to their ancestors. That's called heaven, right? Although I wouldn't call your ancestors such a heavenly bunch of people. You might have noticed. When they come out in families, there's problems. But what about souls that know those amber stairs of birth and death inside out? Say, how about Dalai Lama? Say 14 conscious births or so. Was able to give up his consciousness in a sort of dissolution of the mind stream. The Tibetans would describe it a little differently, but it's known to them, yoga. So, and then coming out of that when they want to take on another body. So it's really the same dynamics that happen when you go from waking dreaming to deep sleep. And waking dreaming, deep sleep, you're just doing it without your consciousness in tow. Your consciousness is not there. Your third eye is not opened and watching the process. So you practice honing your third eye. It's called your witness consciousness, and you cannot get to witness consciousness unless you can not touch things, not selfish grasping, you see, not holding on to things through whatever reason, from greed, from fear, or for just mere pleasure. You have to let go, let go, let go. The more you can let go, all the way back into the mind and ego complex, you see, because there's the ego right there, ahamkara. It's in the fourfold mind. And that's called the antakarana. If you look at the Sanskrit term, it means anta means inner, kara means cause. So they're already telling you that the mind's the cause for all this, not God. And if you put 5 billion minds together, you've got a powerful world. See, there's a lot of thought projection going on there, a lot of vibration, a lot of projection. And when half of them go to sleep at night, half of that gets withdrawn into a state of sort of root ignorance, because they're not going into the inner kingdoms of heaven within, or into the bardos, like the Buddhists say, consciously, are they? They're just giving up their consciousness and going into a state of formlessness, without your consciousness to bear. But samadhi, on the other hand, is going into formlessness in full consciousness of what's there. There are proofs for this, called the 6 proofs in Vedanta. And they make a great study. Analabdhi is one of them. It means non-apprehension. The pot is not there. See? So you know the pot is not there, but how do you know it's not there? Because it was once there. So immediately, non-apprehension or emptiness, something not being there, is compared to its opposite, right? So non-apprehension of a thing is a great facet to finding out the consciousness of a thing, the existence of a thing. Non-existence has to be there in order to show up existence, you see. So it's a very deep philosophical process that people would be very good for them to enter into. And there are 5 other proofs like that. Inference. Oh, I see smoke on that hill, so there must be fire. See? That's inference. That's a proof of existence. You take it and you apply it then, not to earth and smoke and fire, but you apply it to the inner worlds. Oh, all of this is smoke, you see, so there must be fire somewhere. If you have a creation, you have to have a creator. Where did all of this come from? From a void? You're going to tell me that? You should avoid the void. If you're a nihilist, you should annihilate nihilism. It's not getting you anywhere. Somebody came back and told you there was a void somewhere. Someone came back and gave it a name, so there must be a witness of the void. Sorry, it's not going to run, it's not going to wash, not going to hold water. So inference is a very powerful way of inferring the presence of something that other people are not seeing or not believing or outright denying. All the best things are unseen or non-touch, you see. So they perfect this body-mind mechanism in its consciousness in various states. They cut their teeth on that kind of non-dual philosophy. And that's the creator of great teachers and gurus and sages and seers and rishis, knowers of truth. And then those pass along the truth to us in the form of the Upanisads, which now you're reading, you see, and hearing. All uninterpolated for thousands of years. Thousands of years. To come to know the vastness of your inner terrain, not just your outer terrain, is what the seers have done. Taken a long time to inspect it. And so dissolving the mind stream process is a very powerful meditation. Very seldom that you get instructions in meditation. You can go to some schools of Buddhism and get the Shinei meditation, you see, or the burning pillar meditation, or the shamatha meditation. Or you can get the meditation on form in some spiritual circles, on the Ishtam, on Jesus, on Buddha, on Krishna, and so forth. Or you can go and try and get the non-dual meditation. You see, and get some instruction in that, as hard as that is to teach. Somewhere along the way, then you'll find that you need to know what you're not in order to know who you are. Because you're trying to find your true nature, your true self that you've lost. So that's not going to work until you get rid of everything that you're not. The non-self has to go so that the real self can stand forward. Will the real self stand up? See? Well, it's standing up all the time, but there's too much in the way to see it. And people's attachment to 5 elements, to 5 senses, to the prana, and so forth, to their dreams, to states of existence which are not ultimately real. In fact, the Vedanta would be so brash as to call them unreal. Some schools would call them illusory. The Mayavadan school, for instance. So others would call it empty. Empty of what? Well, empty of any substance, because it's all vibrating particles, isn't it? Or how about empty of the ability to fulfill you? How about that? When objects that you're coveting that are made of the 5 elements get destroyed, stolen, you get bored with them, or they get taken away, how real can they be? Real means everlasting, not just temporary. I hope we all understand that when we say the word unreal in Vedanta, or emptiness in Buddhism, that we're talking about things that are ever-changing. And the ever-changing, again, one of the proofs of truth is sakshi, witness consciousness. And in order to notice that things are changing, you have to have something stable underneath it to have noticed that. Buddha, gave that teaching when he said he got out of the river and sat on the banks finally. So he means the river of time. If you're going around in the river of time, you never see the things that are in front of you or the things that are in back of you, because they're going in the same way. So all of a sudden you start concluding, you're great thinkers, you see, as thick as a brick, they say. They start concluding, that basically it's all linear. It's one long line. And nobody sees the connecting point, that it's all cycles. So dinosaurs before me, and who knows what the hell in front of me, you see. If we don't even believe in a future birth, we just go to a one lifetime scenario, then the whole thing is just linear, you see. But those beings who got out of the river and sat on the banks saw the same thing come around again enough times to know that it was all cyclic. And it's just like if you go out here to Kauai and you stand on the top of the Nepali coast there and take that hike, you can almost see the curvature of the world. If you look out over the ocean, you can almost see it where it starts to curve. Well, a great soul, called Lord Buddha, Shakyamuni, did that with time. He got out and he looked at it long enough from a sakshi, from a witness standpoint, where he saw that it began to curve in the distance. And then he said, I see, it's a cycle. I think I'll meditate for 40 or 50 days on that to see if I can get off of it. So that's why he's called one of the greatest of all spiritual luminaries that ever visited the earth, is he found a way out of rebirth with his ancestors. So he found a way to really help his ancestors by not touching them anymore, by letting go of them, not by attaching to them and getting all embroiled with them in their pathos, in their suffering, in samsara, in the Kala Chakra, in Maya. Look at how much you're going to have to let go of if you've attached, you see, already. If you haven't attached already, no problem. See? If you know that everything comes out of the mind in reverse fashion, and that's called evolution, but you don't know about involution yet, then you need to, as Christ told the fisherman along the river, get an internal life. Get a life, see. And that's precisely what the dissolution of the mind stream affords you. You can actually do it inside of 10 or 15 minutes in your head. You just memorize these things, run them in, and run them out again. At first, you're going to probably take more like a week or a month, to meditate on that alamban of earth. Everything about earth I could possibly know. Everything about water I could possibly know. In fact, if I'm meditating on water and I find out I fear it, then I can probably connect with my past lifetime where I drowned. And I know where my fear comes from, you see. So there's a lot that gets filled in as you begin this process. And you want to take it on wholeheartedly, 100%, right? This, you're making a commitment to this. A lot of times people enter into the spiritual life and they tell me, see, how much of a commitment do I have to make to this? I'm afraid I can't make that much commitment. That's why I'm asking. I just want you to know ahead of time. I'm not very good at committing. See, I said, well, you better learn how to be committed, or else they're going to commit you. Eventually, you see, in a nice, tight wrap jacket, see? Because the world will drive you crazy if you don't renounce it. The great souls all renounced it. They gave it up, hook, line, and sinker. You may have noticed. Those are the beings we call the greatest beings of the world. So maybe we start practicing a little bit of detachment, of renunciation. And so that all gets afforded to you too as you begin to let go of the 5 elements. Buddha called your 5 elements your 5 desires. You wanted a solid place to place your feet, so you invented earth. You projected earth, you and your cohorts, millions of them. And you wanted to slake your thirst and immerse yourself. There's water and drinks and all of that, you see. And the same with fire and air and ether. All of those things came out of the mind, the collective mind of people. They weren't created by God, and nature couldn't do it alone. Nature just drove you the materials. So Buddha also talked about the 6 transformations inside of the 5 elements. If you take on the 5 elements, then you're going to have birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death as a part of your package. How fun can that be? So those are your playmates at recess. You see, when you come along and project a world in space and time based on cause and effect. This is all cause and effect, you see. And you do it all so that you can get to the formless Brahman. You can actually immerse yourself in an ocean of bliss, not an ocean of liquid, and certainly not an ocean of suffering. Those are 3 different kinds of oceans. One's called Samsara Sagara, the ocean of samsara, and the other end is Ananda Sagara, the ocean of bliss. Which one would you want to plunge into, you see? And in the middle there's this ocean of water, you see, too, which is just telling you all the time, you know, of the nature. But if you meditate on the ocean as part of that meditation on water you did, then you would be able to come to know water. And once you knew water, fear would go away. And same with land and air and ether. Ether is a great one for the scientists, you see, that, and for the great thinkers, if they acknowledge it, if they acknowledge its existence. In many systems of the world still, you have 4 elements, not thinking in terms of the 5th element yet. But the 5th element is where you find prana. That's why, you know, I said man does not live by bread alone. That's where your ancestors went. And that's where you go when you exit the body. You go inward on the back of this great Garuda bird called prana, which takes souls out of the body and into the kingdoms of heaven and back again. If you don't know prana, then you don't have a vehicle. You don't want to be on the big island here without a vehicle. It's a big island. The buses aren't very dependable and so forth. In that same way, you don't want to leave home without it, you see. You don't want, you will have to know this prana, because when it carries your thoughts, and it doesn't just carry nutrients to your organs or make your lungs go in and out, as the Hatha yogis are teaching, but there's a whole different implication of prana that's called psychic prana. You're talking about running through nerves that are not just physical nerves, but are little tubular nadis, they're called, and energy flows through them. There are 100,000 of those inside of each gross nerve, the yogis say. So the prana is running along that, and that's where consciousness is going. Do you think consciousness takes up space? Does it take up space tonight in dream? If you run a race in a dream tonight, are you going anywhere? Are you winning an award? You're coming out of your dream exercised? See? Consciousness doesn't take up space the way we think of space. And that's the drawback of being attached too much to the idea of physical alone. The more you march in the more you see everything slim down. The non-touch yoga, finally what occurred to you that, oh, I see, none of this is real. I can't touch it. I can't own it. I shouldn't covet it. I should be free. Novel idea there, you see. That I should actually think that I not only can be free, but my soul is free by nature. I am free. Ever free, never bound. So we approach this kind of realization of asparsha yoga or non-touch yoga by filling in some of the blanks, by connecting the dots, by following the trail of breadcrumbs back inside of oneself, all the way to the great self, which then gets dissolved into the ocean of Brahman. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, but if you want a sort of hands-on way of looking at it, Sri Ramakrishna is always good for that. He says, when a sugar cube dissolves in hot liquid, it first breaks in half, then into small chunks, then into granules, and finally there is nothing left but sweet liquid. Similarly, when the mind moves towards authentic meditation, it first contemplates the dual world, then the many teachings, then the living particles of its own intelligence, and finally enters full immersion. What remains then is one blissful, indivisible, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness. That's, of course, my own version of what Sri Ramakrishna, his analogy of dropping a sugar cube into a cup of tea. It just dissolves by chunks. Pretty soon granules, pretty soon you can't see it. We actually take our children here in this SRV Sangha when we get them on retreat and so forth, and we do this at the table in the morning. Let's eat. No, we're going to do an experiment first. Take this sugar cube, drop this into the cup, you see, and watch it and tell me what happens. Or take this cylinder of oil. Whale oil. Does oil and water mix? Yeah, it does, Babaji, they all say. So I say, just meditate for 45 seconds, please. And then you see the separation process, you see. And the teaching is, the soul and nature do not mix. It's not going to be a popular equation, because people are trying to mix themselves with nature all the time, and they think that that's what they should be doing. This life is about form. We should mix form in with everything, you see. But your soul is not going to agree with you. Ultimately, it's going to say, I cannot be matter. I'm sorry, matter is birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, the Buddha told me. Matter is the 5 elements and the 5 senses with objects. And I don't know yet that all of matter came out of me. I think some God created it somewhere. Or that it evolved over 4 billion years. You see, I don't know that it's not linear. I know that it's cycle. In other words, it's there all the time. Matter's there. It's just there in a manifest state, and then when it disappears, like the dinosaurs, it goes into an unmanifested state. But you can't destroy the dinosaurs. Have you noticed? They're coming at you in movies, they're coming at you in books. They're in the mind. My point precisely. Everything is in the mind. These are called mind-only schools. And speaking about non-touch, one of the things they gave up touching was the idea of a 7-day creation theory, or eternal damnation, or 4,320,000,000 years evolutionary theory with nothing at the end. See? Or one lifetime with nothing at the end, but death. That's what they gave up in the non-touch yoga. And so the dissolution of the mind stream is just like that. You see, it teaches you, it slaps your hand for each one of them. Do not touch that. Do not touch that. Do not covet that. Do not own that. Be free. Your soul and nature do not mix. It only seems like they do. For about 45 minutes, or 45 seconds, or 45 lifetimes, if you will. How long will it take you to get out of the misconception that you have anything to do with nature at all? Well, only so long as you practice this dissolution to the mind stream and separate yourself from nature. The father of yoga called it Kaivalya. Now everyone likes yoga. Anything that's come from India has been popularized. It's yoga. Unfortunately, it's only the physical side of it. But people are beginning, hopefully, to get into the mental side of yoga. That is, this antakarana, this mind, this fourfold mind, has projected everything, and it can dissolve it too, and it's doing that day and night. And it's doing that amongst not only the human beings, but the ancestors have their world too, and they're also projecting the ancestor world and keeping it together. See, the mind has a solidifying power. It's called earth. The mind has a liquefying power. It's called water. But the idea of earth and water in the mind of God, this cosmic mind here, see that here? Causation, solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, all pervasiveness. Right there, that's earth, water, fire, air, but involved. It came out and it got evolved, and the power of solidity in the cosmic mind turned into earth here. It's all ideation. And you dissolve it just like that tonight in deep sleep. It doesn't take you, 15 minutes, say for my wife, to dissolve everything. She goes to sleep, she's in deep sleep like that. I know, because she stops breathing. And it freaked me out a couple times. So, and some people will take longer depending on their day. You see, they might dream a lot. And dream is just regurgitation of the waking state, and vice versa, you see. Gaudapada, the master of non-touch yoga, said, there's no difference between the waking and dreaming state. None at all, essentially. They're the same thing. It's a surprising statement to make. But it's true when you analyze it over time. Basically, you're doing the same things in dream, and you're projecting in dream, and you're using the same elements. They're just called your subtle body. And out here, you're doing that very same thing in the physical body. And time is one of those things that you're playing with. Time becomes out of your control in dreaming, doesn't it? You don't know, or one dream starts and the other one dream lets off. But that's what they want you to do when you get up early in the morning to meditate. First, that's why they want you to sit immediately. Don't wash your hands, don't eat, don't do anything. Get out of your bed and go and sit. And then if you do, you have the best opportunity of remembering what you just dreamed. And you can trace one dream to the dream before it, and that dream to the dream before that. And if you can do that one night or one day in your meditation, you can actually see where you came into form out of deep sleep. This is a sort of quick version of the dissolving the mind stream. You'll find out how you took form. And that's a great awakening for a person. Because essentially they're formless, you see. We're all formless. Death makes us formless. Deep sleep makes us formless. Meditation can make us formless. And samadhi definitely renders us formless. That is, the unseated samadhi. Nirvikalpa, it's called, where all mental fancies have been blown out. Buddha called it nirvana, made extinct. See? My mind was made extinct. I'm Buddha mind now, I'm no mind. So the very same non-touch yoga in Buddhism is there in Advaita Vedanta. So that is a quick dissolution of the mind stream that you can study. So that's why they want you to get up and meditate on your dreams. We're not trying to make our dreams lucid. The mind is such that some are lucid, some aren't. That's all. Some are good, some are bad, and some are mixed. Just like the waking state, you might have noticed. If you tried rendering your waking state lucid, not many people have achieved that, have they? So waking and dream state, it's the same problem. How are you going to make something that's imperfect by its very nature perfect? You should rather be looking for what is perfect by nature, which is you. See, finding the self, self-realization, enlightenment, illumination of mind, nirvikalpa, satori, samadhi, moksha, mukti. There's enough words for it out there to suggest that it exists. What's in a word? A whole lot. A whole lot. In fact, everything is in the word. Christ was trying to tell John about that. And John was a great theologian, right, amongst the apostles. He was the one that had the chance of understanding the kingdoms of heaven are within you, or my Father's mansion has many chambers. are you talking just, symbolically here, O Lord? No, this is literal, John. Meditate on it. Go to Gethsemane and meditate on it. Because you have to open this all up inside of you. Well, long before John and Christ walked the earth, they were doing this kind of meditation. And they were encountering all the obstacles. And that's what this chart's about. I've shown you the dissolution of the mind chart enough. The live streaming audience can see it at the break, close up on their screens. And all of you can come up and see it closer up too, but it will be in that new book, Dissolving the Mind Stream. I'm not making a plug for it here. I'm trying to get you all to read it so that you can practice it. Practice makes perfect. Sadhana is akin to illumination. See, most people will get illumination by sadhana, not by grace. Grace is an unknown factor. Or you might say sadhana is grace, because the Lord and the Mother of the Universe is giving you the will to practice. You ever notice that? Oh, I feel great, I think I'll practice. Gee, I think instead of being committed, I'll become committed. See? I will know the truth, and the truth will set me free. So let's move, as we went through this fairly quickly, but it gives you the idea of how these quintuplication process, they call it the quintuplication process because it's all in fives. That's how things rolled out, in fives. See. And there are many great teachings about it that come in threes. And then most of the impediments come in twos, called duality. So you use the threes to calm down the twos so that you can understand the fives, so you can get to the one. It's basically kind of a nutshell version of it. Please look at that more later. We've had it in class before and studied it quite a bit, but I want to show you Father of Yoga's idea, because he takes up more of the problems. This doesn't really, the dissolution of the mind stream doesn't really throw at you the 9 vikshepas and the 5 kleshas. And I mean, Father of Yoga came along and said, you need a practice and you need to know what you're doing. Just a highfalutin philosophy might not be everyone's cup of tea, see. This is a kind of combination of cosmology and philosophy, and this is for studious people. This is for people who are not averse to getting in there and memorizing these things, learning the Sanskrit terms and the English or whatever language you have to learn them in, and putting it into practice in their meditations. Basically, you're called Gyanis and Janis, people who study and people who meditate. And if you put Gyanam and Jnanam together, you've got a very powerful soul there who's knocking at the door of reality, and pretty much is easily leaving relativity behind, you see. But if you're talking about Father of Yoga having compassion on the rest of us, then you're talking about an 8-limb system that you can take up. It's not that you're not going to have to memorize there and do some study, but it does help you familiarize yourself with the kleshas. Very first thing, 5 obstacles. The 5 hells, Vedavyas called it. It's interesting because hell is not a location in space and time, like it is with fundamentalist Christians, for instance. There's no devil, there's no hell. It's all in your mind. We just said it's all in your mind. We mean it. A psychiatrist may see you on the couch and say, oh, it's all in your mind. And if you're a Vedantist, you'll sit up and say, yes, you just said a mouthful, doctor. It definitely is all in our mind. I'm a Vedantist, you see. I know that everything originated with the mind. The mind's the culprit. The mind's the projector. But it can also be your friend and withdraw everything, and it can do this consciously. And that's called a master, a past master. And you can take as many lifetimes in consciousness as a bodhisattva, like Dalai Lama, for instance. That's the point, you see. I know the stairs inside, up and down, not just the top stairs and the bottom stairs, the heaven and the earth of it all, but I know all the steps in between too. So when I die, or when I go into meditation, or when I go into deep sleep, I take my consciousness with me, thank you very much. Don't leave home without it. And your home, my Father's mansion, is vast. It's not just vibrating physical particles. You're talking about pranic particles, mental particles, intelligent particles, thought particles. See, this gets very subtle and very vast, and it all tapers down. As you go inside, you realize consciousness is all pervasive. It isn't spatial like we think of it out here. When you've come here, and you'll find this out if you meditate on air and ether, this is spatial. But when that space all goes away inside of you, or it gets transformed into a dream space, you see, then where is it? A man running a race in a dream, you see. Where is it? I'm going nowhere, but I'm doing all this stuff, you see. So then if the waking dream state is the same as the waking, you come out here and you say, gee, maybe I'm going everywhere here and I'm going nowhere too, you see. Doesn't it sound like your life sometimes? People complain about it. Oh, I've got to go do something, you see. But they should be doing all of those things from non-doing. So I'm stable, I'm still, I'm peaceful, I'm content, I'm immovable, see, I'm all pervasive. These are your mantras in spirituality. And you take them seriously and you repeat them to yourself. It's another one of those proofs of truth, I call it. You see, I call it Shabda, testimony of the scriptures and the seers. So that all of that, you see, I've put out in front of me, and I've gotten all of this behind me. So let's look at some of this. The 5 obstacles. Klesha means impediment. So you have avidya. This is a very special list. You're not going to find this by going to school. You see, you're going to have to go find a teacher and say, it's not like going up and saying, well, I'm ignorant, teach me math, teach me mechanics, see, or something. No, when you go to a guru who says, I'm ignorant, will you make me literate? He says, no, it's not like that. Ignorance of your true nature is what we're talking about. If you knew your true nature, you'd know everything. The greatest question of all time ever asked to the rishis by one of their students was, the student came into the circle, all right, what would you like to know? And he said, teach me that one thing by which knowing everything else is known. And the rishis went, well done. That's the best question I've ever heard. See, jumps to the chase. Teach me that one thing by knowing all else is known. Well, that one thing is the Atman. It's the true nature, Buddha nature they call it. Is your soul with a capital S, not your ego soul, your mind soul, but your true soul, your all-pervasive, immovable, non-touch soul, you see. So knowing that, everything else is known. So the opposite of that, vidya, is avidya. Avidya means ignorance. Vidya means knowledge of my true self. Avidya means I don't have the foggiest. My parents didn't have the foggiest. Their parents didn't have the foggiest. Generations that I came from didn't have the foggiest. They never heard of the word Atman or soul. Or if it was a soul, it was a soul that went from heaven to earth to hell. I'm not interested in that soul. Because I've heard that the soul is immovable. It's that soul I want to know about. So I must get rid of root ignorance. That's the first of all hells, not knowing my true self. Because all the seers have been taking on bodies, and they're doing fine, you see. But I haven't been taking on a body consciously, and I'm not doing so well here. In fact, it's beginning to occur to me that I've probably had many lifetimes not doing so well. See. Some people, you give them the teaching of reincarnation, you say, great, I can live more lives. See. But you can live more lives committing the same errors, committing the same mistakes, having the same pains at birth, having the same pains at death, and growing and getting disease and illness. Sometimes they say, oh, Buddhism, is just so pessimistic. But they want you to man up. They want you to know the reality of the situation. You can't practice non-touch yoga or extreme detachment until you let go of these things. If everything exists in the mind, then so do all your diseases. You're going to go to medicine? The healers have told me that they have never cured one disease, ever. It's all morphed into another disease. So there's no disease that's ever been cured. That's what the healers are saying nowadays. It's all morphed into something else. Sounds like Maya to me. Run to plug up like there, and another, leak happens over here. You're trying to build your house on shifting sand. Sounds like atoms, molecules, quarks, subatomic particles all changing at a billionth of a second to me. You don't build your house there, you build it on bedrock. Bedrock starts with faith, and then it ends up, in that source of all existence. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Tathagata, Pragyaparam, Paramatman. There are plenty of names for it, which means it must exist. It's inference. There's smoke on that there hill. So avidya, egotism is next, Ashmita. That's right about there in the fourfold mind. Your ego is lurking. Is it ripe or unripe? That's the first thing you'd be asked if you went into his company, Sri Ramakrishna. You've got a pakvahamkara or have you pakvahamkara? Almost sounds local, right? So, has your ego been ripened yet? Have you given it away? Have you surrendered? Have you let go? Are you a candidate for non-touch yoga? Or for Brahman? For realization of Brahman? Wants to know that first thing. Just like the Roshi wants to know if you've died on your pillow yet, you see, and had that little ego death. So that ego is a problem. It's so much of a problem that both Patanjali and Vedavyas, the fathers of yoga and Vedanta respectively, have mentioned it as one of the kleshas. Klesha is an impediment to spiritual progress. A major one. The other one is attachment and aversion. People can't get free because they're being distracted by attachment and then aversion. Then they ping-pong back and forth. This is a duality. Dvandva mohena, Arjuna, is what Krishna says to Arjuna on the battlefield. You must beware of the deluding pairs of opposites. Why? Because they keep you from thinking about reality. And you build a habit of that. So Ramakrishna says, pretty soon you never think of God even by accident. That's really bad, you see. God is your true nature, by the way. Sorry if I'm using a loaded term here for some people. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness. I can use a lot of other words. God is simple. So, that formless reality that's birthless and deathless, that reality. You speak enough about relativity in this country, don't you know there's an opposite to that too? It's called reality. Can there be a relativity without a reality? Form and formlessness go together, bondage and liberation go together. Can't relativity go together with something called reality? Why aren't you approaching reality? Why aren't you acknowledging that it exists? Why are you so afraid of it? Why are you running away from it? I'm talking to the quantum physicists. I'm talking to the doctors, the lawyers, the politicians. But usually those are the ones that won't listen to a crazy person like me, you see. If you're spiritual, you're considered crazy in this world. Oh, they're into religion. He's got religion. See. Well, we don't got religion with a small r, I can tell you that. In Vedanta, we have it with a capital R. And we're willing to stand forth and prove by all the old books out of India that this is true, that this is real, that this is a science, more powerful than your own science, and that thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have followed it, and there are many methods. Vedanta has one, yoga has one, Buddhism has one, Jainism has one, Sikhism has one, Tantra has one, yoga has one, I said that. Vaishnavism has one, Shaiva Siddhanta has one, Shaktism has one, Sankhya has one. It's not just one book and one prophet we're talking about. India is the mother of all religions. They didn't give her that name for no good reason. Hundreds of great souls came out of her, and they're still coming out. And hundreds and thousands of scriptures came out. Not just one book that you have to go around thumping. And these books that came out, they're basically based in non-duality. They know the difference between the revealed scriptures and the ordinary scriptures. That's one of the earliest teachings in India. Revealed scriptures have nothing to do, they're non-touch, see, with the world. They're not going to tell you how to solve your problems or be concerned with who owned what tent peg and what century before Christ, who it got passed to. They're concerned with the relationship between the individualized soul with the Supreme Soul. That's it. If you have to even come down that far, you're beginning to get too close to touch. See, you really should have just stayed at Brahman is. Mm-hmm. Brahman is consciousness. Let's study Brahman as consciousness. Those kinds of ideas. They don't come down from that, the non-touch yogis. Why should they? That's called the ocean of consciousness. You think you go empty there? You get unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss there. See? You get the peace that passes all understanding there. You get the bliss of formlessness that's full. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnabadachate. It's infinite, it's full. Everything in it is full. It's the essential substance, consciousness, Chaitanya, out of which everything sprang, via the vehicle of the word. It's non-vibrational, non-touch. When it begins to vibrate, it has to use its word. And that's called origins. You shouldn't have based your religion on origin. You should have based it on the Almighty Father. You should understand origins and the cosmology that comes out of origins, out of the word, Om, and there it is, there, Pranava, Shabda, Shvota, if you look into the Roman and Greek philosophy that you were talking about this morning, they have words for that. You see, the word, it's a vibration, and that's going to give rise to the cosmic mind. And from cosmic mind, that's going to trickle down to the collective and individual mind. And consciousness is going to trickle down further using prana to these subtle elements, and from the subtle elements and the 10 senses and 5 elements are born. So it all comes out like that, not as a creation, but as a projection. And it goes back into you nicely, just like in a dissolution. You do it. This is your business. It's not God's business. God cannot create anything because it was never destroyed in the first place. Everything exists at all times. It's just a matter of whether it's manifest or not. The ocean exists whether there's waves or not, right? It's the same way here, vibrationally speaking. Brahman is the foundation for manifestation and non-manifestation, but itself does not get involved. That snake there, see, is still. So still that I think I'll go poke it with a stick, because I think it's dead. So I poke it and it wriggles. Mm-hmm. The stationary snake and the power of its wriggling are one thing. So that's like Brahman and its power of movement. They're one thing. It's all vibration, you see. The movement is impetus, a vibration, like speaking a word. So Om is the king of all words. It's very key to non-touch yoga because Gaudapada, who coined the term, coined it on the Mandukya Upanishad. And that's 12 slokas long. You can read it in 5 minutes. You can read an Upanishad in 5 minutes, and it's 12 slokas about Om. The first sloka is, everything is the word. Everything that was before was the word. Everything that will come in the future is nothing but the word. It's all the word. And the first sloka just lays it out for you. Everything manifested and unmanifested has come from the word. In the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. If Christ didn't already know that, which he probably did, he got it from India, and he went there, most likely. Or he heard it and he said, oh, that's a nice way of putting it. See? And then he told John. And John said, what the hey? What are you talking about? Go to Gethsemane and meditate on that, because You're such a great theologian. How can you be a great theologian or cosmologist if you don't know the kingdoms of heaven within? And how can you know them unless you study them in your mind? As coming out of yourself, John. Not out of anything else but yourself. Because you find the word inside of the self, the tradition says. It's humming there. You can hear it. I make a disclosure here. I heard it in the crib. And it frightened me. My first memory on earth is hearing that. And it was associated with this huge vortex that was going around, and I was being sucked into it. And I remember my mother opening the door and coming in because I was crying. And later on I heard it to my teenage, you see. It's a vibration. It's like 1,000 bumblebees, they say, humming inside. So the yogis hear the word, the seers see the light, you see. Depends on if you're visually oriented or audibly oriented. But those two senses are very powerful. Hearing, seeing. You know that. And hearing goes with ether. And sight goes with fire, light. So those connections are important for you. You must make them to be a consummate yogi or yogini. See? You must make those first in your mind. Because all of these problems started in the mind, so you have to do away with them so you can get to the real mind. From ordinary mind to original mind. Or you might say from dull, diseased mind, scattered mind, to ordinary mind, and from ordinary mind to cosmic mind, and from cosmic mind to original mind, and from original mind to no mind. There's a nice quintuplication for you. 5 kinds of mind, you see. And in that original mind, that no mind is everything in potential. Just all tucked back inside of you like it's a great chest of drawers, you see. And Divine Mother ironed everything and put it back in there. So now dinosaurs will come out again at some cycle. Elvis will come back in some cycle. You see. Oh no, don't open that drawer. All nicely ironed and put back in the cosmic chest of drawers called the Mahat, the great mind, in potential. You realize it's not physical anymore, it's a seed. And everything is a seed. And it comes out, and that seed is vibrating inside with the word. So this was known by the king of Christendom, see, before there was Christianity on earth. This was known by him. And he said, he said, in the beginning was the word. But he knew there was no beginning. Gaudapada later, 700 AD, 500 AD maybe, says non-origination is the bottom line to everything. There is no beginning, middle, and end to anything. It's cyclic. Everything is cyclic. The only thing that doesn't cycle is that foundation, the ocean of Brahman, or Buddha nature. It's still, it's stationary, it's peaceful. It's peace beyond understanding. It's samadhi, it's satori, it's koivaya. You have to separate yourself from nature to find that out. That's why they listed everything. So you could say, oh, that's what I have to separate myself from. Father of Samkhya Yoga didn't, in the earliest times, elucidate 24 cosmic principles, or 25, in sets of quintuplication processes, just to show that he wasn't a listless person, you see. That's the joke about in spiritual circles. How do you know a Samkhya yogi? He speaks with a lisp. That is a list. So they know this cosmology. And the Vedantists and the yogis and the Buddhists came along and said, marvelous what he did. I think we'll use it. The Shaivites came along and added 12 more cosmic principles on top, so now there are 36 instead of 24, because they wanted to explain the causal realms, you see. Not just the physical subtle, but they wanted to go into the causal. What happens to a soul when it goes really deep undercover? Deep, deep, deep undercover. See? Under the cover of Maya, through the net of Maya. So it's a marvelous, marvelous system, and it's been there in philosophy ever since, and Christ knew about it too. So the Word is origins, but beyond the Word, in the beginning was with the Word, then it was with God, but what happened when it was God? See, there's the triple teaching again. It was with God in the beginning. It was in the beginning, then it was with God. So a slight separation there, wasn't it? And then it was God. Om is here, third eye. It has two apertures, two petals. One goes out and one goes in. We're not talking about, into my brain and out into air. If you study an object and you study it down to its particles, you're going further out with the object. I hope they find that out. That's why it's empty out there, vibrating at a billionth of a second. That's why they have no substance in it. To really go inward with an object is to go into it, the thought you had of it. That's where it started, not outward into the particles. You're going to be lost in space out there. So to really know an object is to go inside and find its origin. It happened in my mind first. Like an inventor invents something. Didn't it happen in his mind first? And then he put it into manifestation. So the great architect of the universe, the cosmic mind, God has a mind too, but he's not his mind just like you're not your mind. The great architect of the universe thinks in projection style, and everything happens. It's not created, preserved, and destroyed. It's projected, sustained, and withdrawn. And there's no birth and death in it. Birth and death is an illusion. And so here you have it. Attachment and aversion, we were just talking about, the final and lowest hell you can fall into is clinging to life. Or call it fear of death. Either way you call it, it's the same thing. Non-touch yoga is not clinging to life, is it? You let go of life. How did Christ put it? He so who loves his life shall lose it. But he who hates his life shall get it again in eternity. See? If you love your life, you'll lose it, right? You're attached to it. You're clinging to it. But if you let it go, you'll get it again in eternity. That means two things. You can either take as many bodies as you want, and by that time you'll be doing it consciously, like some of our great souls, or you'll just realize the bodiless state and you won't come back into form again. In my tradition, that's called Jivan Mukta, liberated soul. He's a master of the process. Or it's called Videha Mukti, forget the process. Brahman is not a process. I'm going to stay in Brahman, thank you very much. I will be formless. I'm not coming back again. Have no hope for me, for the world forevermore. I'm gone, and I'm gone forever. You see, one great song in India sings. So death is no problem. It's like these beautiful songs they sing. Shukir vashana karo arkadin, Shukir vashana karo arkadin, Taji anyobo kali kali bo, Manobo janomo jadin, Hotui. Shukir vashana karo arkadin. About death he sings, Kamalakanta Haye Branta Bule Shonamashanadin, Kamalakanta Haye Branta Bule Shonamashanadin, Bare bare ashi dukha rashi rashi, Bare bare ashi dukha rashi rashi, Jatan shabe arkadin, Shukir vashana karo arkadin, Shukir vashana karo arkadin. It says, bewildered by Maya, Kamalakanta is forgotten the 9 months and 9 days of suffering in his mother's womb. Forgot all that pain that it took to get here as I came down out from my true nature and took on a body made of 5 elements. Forgot about that. I thought merciful that I don't remember that? Or is that routing me into more of the same all the time? See? Should I face off my pain or should I forget it? Sort of the question the aspirant after attainment of non-touch yoga has to ask him or herself. See? He says, misery and pain is the outcome of relative existence. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear? So here's Kamalakanta's take on it. And through his realization, he worshipped Mother Kali, and Mother Kali revealed to him, see, just like for Sri Ramakrishna, Mother Kali was his ideal too. Found out the Divine Mother of the Universe would reveal these things to him if he entered deep into meditation, if he didn't cling to things, if he let them go. And the best way to learn that is through meditation, isn't it? Study and meditation. A little devotion helps. And cutting your teeth on the world helps too. See, that's where you'll get rid of these kleshas. You have to come full circle and test them in the furnace, in the crucible of the world. These are called kleshas, they're to be overcome. So 5 impediments like that. And I didn't mean to take that much time on them, but as this dissolution of the mind stream happens, you'll see that these are the things that the consummate yogi and yogini is going to face off again, till finally he begins to reach these secret gateways of yoga and these levels of mastery. We'll look at that after the break. Live streaming audience, as usual, may view these at the break. You may also come up and look at them. We will have some little refreshment here at the SRV ashram in Honaka'a, out in the middle of the Ganga Pacifica, with the sun shining on us and the ocean telling us, I am formless, but I can take form, but I can also give it up. I'm a master. See? So may we all watch the ocean and find out the real meaning of what it's telling us. And the suns, the billions of suns in the sky. And I can't quite come to the break yet because I'm inspired about all this. Now, I will let you all go and we'll zoom in 15 minutes. Namaste. Om Bhadram Karnibihi Srinayama Devaha Bhadram Pasyemya Akshabirya Jatra Sthirairangayish Tushtivamsastanavir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indra Vrida Shravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwadevaha Swasti na Starksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshiping the Lord and Mother of the Universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Pure knowledge, pure devotion, and supreme bliss, these are thy boons upon thy devotees. Whatever limitations my mind still harbors will become as dust beneath thy dancing feet. Avoiding misery, conquering restlessness, and transcending suffering, this mind easily accomplishes the impossible through the constant rain of grace which you shower benignly upon me. Some of thy hosts bathe in the sacred river, give alms and accomplish penances for thy sake. But I only remember daily thy sacred words, which are scripture, that confer peace and immortality. Performing a sincere sacrifice of utter unity with thee, O Bhairavanath, my mind enters supreme ecstasy. Then I dance in knowledge of thy presence dwelling in my own heart. Compassionate Bhairavanath, your humble devotee, Abhinavagupta, offers you this hymn of love. By meditation upon it and constant recitation, all beings will easily emerge from the wilderness of samsara.